What's up? What's up? Today I am back with another song breakdown. As you know, I love doing song breakdowns because we get to drop the music and focus on the value of lyrics and themes that can sometimes get overshadowed when you're experiencing the bliss of dope rhymes and dope beats. And speaking of overshadowed, I feel like that becomes very important with today's episode as I am excited to break down my favorite song from the legend out of Detroit who finally makes an appearance on Hip to the Games for a song breakdown. Well, I guess I can't say on because he's not here, but you know what I mean. The legend out of Detroit, like I said, Eminem. And I'm taking it back to prime Eminem. All right, we going back to 2000 to dive into The Way I Am off the 2000 album, the Marshall Mathers LP, which is very fitting because this is one of those songs that I think we truly experience Marshall Mathers and not just Eminem. And I think that, whether it's Eminem or Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers sometimes got lost. And I think albums like this, given by the title, show you how important it was for Eminem to showcase who he really was. And this song does exactly that. M takes three verses to express the frustrations that come with not just being in the limelight in a general sense, but being in the limelight as Eminem. Whether it was his image, his relationship, his personal struggles, he was always in the headlines. And this song was a way for him to let out everything he was bottling up at that time. All right, you know the drill. We're going to enjoy some bars, punchlines, especially rhyme patterns when we're thinking about Eminem, right? But what I hope you get from this and episodes like these is that dirty or clean, everybody has a story. There's always a story. That's what hip hop is. And because it's me, yes, you might also understand just how much God can speak through some of our favorite hip hop songs. All right. So we're going to get into that as well. And I think that's what's been dope about Eminem's career. As much as he's been seen as the hip hop nerd, right? Some of his most beloved songs are the ones like these, the one where he's pouring out all his emotion and all his heart into the record. And, whether pretty or ugly, he just pours his heart out on that microphone. And that's what we're going to get into today. So get ready to travel back to 2000 with me and hear one of hip hop's greatest and biggest stars remind us that there's a whole nother side to the luxury and glamour that comes with a rap career. Welcome to Hip to the Games, the podcast for you, the basketball junkie and the hip hop head. I'm your host, Desmond, and I too have had hoop dreams and enjoy the beautiful genre of hip hop and its history. Together, we will enjoy some of the greatest albums, songs, artists, players, moments, teams, and so much more, while even mixing the two on occasion, all in my hope that you remember why you love both or either of these to begin with. You'll soon understand that Hip to the Games is more than just a podcast, it's a lifestyle. And if you were looking for a platform that combines both basketball and hip hop, you've come to the right place. Welcome back to another episode of Hip to the Games. Shout out to you if you are a loyal listener. You already know the dopeness we're about to get into, but if you happen to be new here, welcome. It's great to have you on board. It's great to have you listening. And a special shout out to you if you've been watching on YouTube as well. I appreciate you showing love in the comments and tuning into every episode. It truly does mean a lot. And of course, before we really get into today's episode, I got to give my pregame shout outs real quick. The first one always goes to the creative director, Jesus Christ, for another H2DG episode, as it's always a blessing and a privilege to be able to record and use the resources he's given me to record and just the ideas he's given me. To just be able to come on here and execute the dope idea he's given me is always a blessing. And I always want to give my gratitude for that. And I also want to show love to my 19 Media Group family for the opportunity to represent the home team night in and night out. I'm always trying to represent them, and they do such a great job of establishing a network of independent podcasters who all just have some great shows around sports, music, and culture. And I'm sure if you tap into 19M Group on Twitter, 19 Media Group on Instagram, 19 Media Group on YouTube, I guarantee you that you will find another teammate of mine to support because everybody's just always been doing some really great work, and it's always a privilege to represent those guys. So Be sure to support, whether that's on video, on social media. All the support is seen and felt on our end, especially mine. Whether it's listens, views, comments, reposts, whatever it is, all of that is seen and felt on my end, and I sincerely appreciate it. But as we start today's breakdown, if you do happen to be new here to how I do things, you should know that I do keep it clean on here. All right. So I will be censoring and even editing, changing words to lyrics that include sexual innuendos, vulgarity, anything that ain't clean. But you better believe I still keep it hip hop, and you will leave this episode inspired with a smile, a laugh, or just a simple reminder why you love hip hop in the first place. All right. So, with all that out the way, we can get into some background on The Way I Am by the legend that is Marshall Mathers, aka Eminem. All right, so knowing what Hip to the Games is all about, I have to get one thing very clear as I start this episode. Something that I got to get out off my chest from the get go. Eminem is a great MC. You think that everybody would know that and acknowledge that already. But he be getting some hate, especially in the recent years, and simply just for his style of rap. I guess people think it's played out. Um, and I have to establish that out the gate though, because the thing that makes Eminem great, and the thing that people often hate on is the same thing that makes him great and has made him great all these years. He is and has been one of the best students in hip hop, which to no surprise has made him one of the best rappers we've ever heard. But it's funny, just last episode, I shared my thoughts on the NBA's done with the 90s trend on social media, right? And I think that's immediately what came to mind when I'm preparing this episode and I'm doing an episode knowing I'm covering the greatness that is Eminem and just his style of rapping. I immediately thought of that because, like I said, it just seems like we're in that era now. People are done with the 90s, and in rap, they're done with Eminem, right? And you know, like I said, it's the style of rapping that allows him to be the overall MC that he is. Just like I said in that episode, you don't get Kyrie Irving if you don't see Rod Strickland first, right? You don't get Kobe if it wasn't for Mike. And the same thing here. You don't get Eminem without Big Daddy Kane. And likewise, you can see how Eminem's style has rubbed off on guys like obviously his boy Royce the 5'9". I think even J. Cole has a little bit of that in there sometimes. A guy like Logic, like anybody that takes pride in multi-syllable rhymes at some point, their branch on the hip hop tree either connects right to Eminem or somebody that influenced Eminem, right? And I'll even put it this way: your favorite rapper, much like your favorite basketball player, has a go-to move. Kobe, top of the key, left to right cross, pull up at the elbow. Right, Carmelo, jab, jab, jump shot. KD, between the legs, straight into the hezzy pull. Rappers are the same way. Like, so as much as people try to make fun of Eminem for oh, I wanted an orange, but I couldn't peel it, so I threw it at the door hinge. Now it's messed up, so I had to settle for porridge. You know what I'm saying? Everybody loves to knock Eminem for that kind of stuff right there that I just did. Those bending words, seemingly random just to get a rhyme scheme across, like all those kind of raps. That's a style he's mastered. Like that's his go-to move, and we've seen it work throughout much of Eminem's career. Again, like I say, a lot of the greatest bucket getters in the NBA and WNBA, if you really pay attention, they're for example, take LeBron's 40,000 plus points, right? A large chunk of those points have been the same things, right? Triple threat, drives to the rim, fast break points. It's not like literally every single point is something different. Again, you watch somebody like Kevin Durant and you realize he makes the games look so easy because it is for him. He makes it easy on himself. He's not forcing things. It's one dribble, two dribble pull-ups, hezzy cross, get the defense off balance, shoot the jumper because I'm 6'10", right? Like it's easy. And it's the same thing what Eminem does when he raps. And I think, like I said, we see that throughout Eminem's career, but especially in this song, The Way I Am. He does that a lot in this song. And I think the difference between Eminem and average rappers is that he knows how to execute that corny rhyme scheme while saying something in the process. Sometimes you can tell, don't get me wrong. There are times Eminem, you can tell when he's just sparring and practicing his craft. But then there are other times, like The Way I Am, where you can tell that Eminem has used it as a setup for his verse, to where it's like, I'm going to rap like this for this verse, but this is what I want to say. And that's how I'm going to fit it into my established rhyme scheme, right? It's just, it's a puzzle. You know what I'm saying? It's a puzzle with an end goal in mind, with an end picture in mind. And hip to the games is all about the fundamentals. So I had to establish them before we continue and make that one thing clear. All right. But let's look beyond the rhyme book. Eminem is in his late 20s when this song drops and this album comes out. This is his third studio album, right? So after a successful sophomore album, he's starting to get used to his fame now. And that often comes with criticism, of course, right? And he was already getting criticism for his often bold, wild, vulgar lyrics. But now comes the criticism for simply being a white guy in hip hop. Now people are just poking and prodding at everything he does because you know the saying, they build you up to break you down. And then, of course, there's the part where your personal problems start to become public, right? So his relationship is public. Again, he's talking about it in his music, right? So it becomes even more public. Then his drug addiction starts to become public as he starts to hint at it in songs, right? While trying his best to look okay in real life. So my point here is that Eminem is going through a lot in this time, and this is where The Way I Am comes into play. He's at his breaking point, being in the public eye, and he's at a point where he's like, you know what? Since y'all think y'all know me so much, I'm cool. Believe what you want. Whatever helps you sleep at night. I'm not gonna drive myself crazy. I'm not trying to drive myself insane begging for your peace. But obviously, creatives use their art as expression. So while Eminem may not have he may have chose to not care what everybody was saying about him, The Way I Am gave him that space to unleash everything he was holding on to deep down. And episode 29 of Hip to the Games is still one of my favorites to date. It featured myself and guest Baltimore's own D Skills Harris. Shout out to my guy. Shout out DBL. But in that episode, we compared basketball players to hip hop artists. A very fun episode. But you may remember, I personally compared Eminem to Russell Westbrook.
And check out the man, he goes by the name of Thunder.
Slim Shady, brain dead like Jim Brady. I'm an M80, you little like that Kim lady. I'm buzzing, dirty dozen, naughty rotten rhymer. Cursing that you play is worse than Marty Schottenheimer. You whacking and you bitch your style from.
And this is a comparison I still stand by because, in my opinion, they both had their hurdles when it came to truly being accepted by the larger media. When Russ came into the game, it was, oh, he's not a true point guard. He plays too fast and he doesn't take care of the basketball. Like, he'll never be a championship point guard. Like, OKC, he's not going to last more than probably 4 or 5 years with this team, right? Then he makes the finals in his fourth year in the league. At that point, he had a career high in points. He had established himself with Kevin Durant as like, okay, we are a dynamic duo, and together they make the NBA Finals at the age of like they were both like 23 years old. Then Russ, he showed he could pass, but then they questioned if he could score efficiently. So then when he showed the media and everybody that he could score a lot, then they said, oh, well, you don't pass enough. So then he started putting everything together and he's getting triple doubles. He's actually making triple doubles look easy in a league where triple doubles are still harder to get. And then they said, oh, well, you're stat chasing. You're just doing it for the numbers. Right? You never sacrifice your numbers in order to win. And then now here he is in a Clippers uniform making that very sacrifice, right? Sacrificing his stats, sacrificing his starting spot just so they could find a winning formula, which has worked for them, right? And it's the same thing with Eminem. I saw a 2000 interview, an interview on YouTube from 2000 where Eminem said it bothered him that people always pointed to him being white or something controversial he said, as opposed to his overall skills as an MC, as opposed to actually in depth looking at what he's saying and the large scheme of who he is as a person and as a rapper. And now, you hear Eminem is overrated, right? If he was black, nobody would care, like all these crazy things. Yet his peers are the ones that speak highly of him. and many of his songs can speak for themselves. But the thing that Russ and Eminem share to me is that most of all, they never gave a you know what. You know what I'm saying? They never cared throughout their entire journey. They always kept their foot on the gas, ignored the hate, and succeeded. So there's my hip to the games comparison for this episode, and I think it serves as a lesson to say, bump the haters, keep investing in your gift. And to me, the cool thing about The Way I Am is the beat. I mean, it's the perfect instrumental for Eminem to just spill out everything he's feeling and facing. It's like this subtle piano, you know. It's very subtle, I don't know if that's the right term. I'm not like music theory or anything like that. Like I'm just me. But I think you know what I mean. There's just something about that softer sound in the arena that is hip hop, which is encouraged to be hardcore, right? I'm going to say that again. There's something about a softer sound in an arena in hip hop, which is encouraged to be hardcore. Think Jay-Z, Dead Presidents, What I'm Here For, Gangstar, Milk Bone, Keep It Real, and that kind of style. And the best part, Eminem produced this beat. Now, I want to shout out Jeff Bass, of course, right? One half of the Bass brothers who worked with Eminem a ton during his early years. He was the pianist for this song, right? He played the piano for this song. But I think it's just really dope that in a song where Eminem just lets everything out, he's the one that orchestrated the music behind it all, right? It was like as if Eminem said, you know, I let me do my journal, right? I don't need a feature. I don't need a producer. Like on the surface, it's just me and the music. If I'm gonna be open and honest about everything, let it be how I want it to be, right? I think there's something poetic about that. Who are you to dictate the way I am? Mm. So in a song that's so introspective, Eminem took the same approach as far as production as well. I think there's just a dope connection there. Give Eminem the ball on the wing and get out the way. The defense has no answer for that, right? And I think that's a good way to end some background for the song. Like I said, I really think this is just an isolation play for Eminem. For the basketball reference. So with all that said, let's officially get into the breakdown of The Way I Am.
I mean, if you take those lyrics and you pull them away from the music and you put them up on the wall somewhere and someone had to look at them, they would say, well, this is genius. This is genius work.
Now, the funny thing about the intro of The Way I Am is that it seems like Eminem kind of wanted to start it inspirational, similar to what he ended up doing on Lose Yourself, right? Oh, if you have one opportunity, you know what I'm saying? He gets you like motivated before, right? And yes, Lose Yourself may have dropped in 2002, but mind you, Eminem had that demo 2 years prior, which is the same year this drops, right? Which kind of adds up considering the timing of the Marshall Mathers LP. So, right, you have Lose Yourself with kind of more inspirational intro, but then in The Way I Am, it's almost like he forgoes that, right? Like, so you can't help if there was some kind of correlation here, right? Because he says, all right, Dre, just let it run. Turn the beat up a little bit. And then he says, like, yo, this song is for anyone. But then he kind of stops and just says, you know what, forget it. Just shut up and listen. And I think, again, that was almost like his way of saying, like, you know what? Yeah, like I want this to inspire people. But at the end of the day, like, man, just let me cook. Like I got something to say. So again, like I said, notice how Eminem was about to like dedicate the song to a specific section of his audience, but then we can presume that he snapped out of it and was like, nah, this song is for me, and from the jump, I think it's that moment where Eminem waves everybody off, like, nah, I don't need no screen. Coach, I don't care what you just said in the timeout. Like, I got this. Let me ISO and go to work. And he doesn't hesitate as he starts a great rhyme display in verse 1 with this. I sit back with this pack of zigzags and this bag of this weed. It gives me the stuff needed to be the most meanest MC on this earth. And since birth, I've been cursed with this curse to just curse and just blurt this berserk and bizarre ish that works. And it sells and it helps in itself to relieve all this tension, dispensing these sentences. Wow. So remember what I said about Eminem's style of rap, right? It's fundamental. That's why it works so well here. I mean, if you're an aspiring MC, this is the kind of flow you practice. Again, y'all, you know me by now. It took every bit of me to not rap that and actually recite that for you. Like, because it's one of those things you can really drill yourself on that kind of rap and like develop your voice, if that makes sense, right? Train your voice to rap this way so you can master other styles. The easier styles get even easier when you master the more complex, harder styles like these, where you really got to pay attention to breath control and enunciation and pauses, all those things. You got to train your voice to not stumble over these lines that might cause tongue twisters, right? Like this is MC work right here, and say what you want about Eminem's rapping style, but this stuff right here is textbook. It's textbook. Look at the amount of rhymes he displays, and if you watched the Art of Rap documentary that dropped year, what was it, like 2012, 2013, something like that? Eminem was clear about his writing process and how he sees words as puzzles, and I mentioned that earlier, right? He has an end picture in mind every time he raps. And he always loves trying to find ways to sandwich words and schemes together. So obviously you can imagine M like, okay, what are all possible outcomes for the word back? Right? Okay, you know what? Let me rhyme the bass sound and then flip it, right? I sit back with this pack of zigzags in this bag, right? Then notice he seamlessly continues his rhyme scheme while still building his story sentence-wise, right? So your rap ear is getting satisfied, but you're also following everything he's saying from a storytelling perspective, right? So then again, like I said, he flips kind of the scheme again, right? So in this bag of this weed, it gives me the stuff needed to be the most dangerous MC, right? So it's still following the same rhyme structure. And then we go again, it just keeps flowing like seamlessly. And then we go from earth to curse and then tension, dispensing, sentence. Like this dude carries the rhyme. To me, it was like the rhythm of a boxer on the speed bag, right? Like that's how Eminem is with rap. You just constantly have that rhythm when you're on a speed bag, right? Like it's the same thing when Eminem is rapping. And really, again, if we're taking that speed bag analogy, it what does that sound like? A drum. And then what do drummers do? They stay in the pocket. Eminem is staying in his pocket even as he's flipping the rhyme scheme. All right, yeah, yeah, yeah. You tuned into the right podcast. In case you were questioning that. So yeah, like I said, I just think it's the effortless jump between rhymes. He's not just pulling them out of his butt, right? Like his story still flows. And like his message, I sit back with my papers ready to smoke, right? It helps me be the MC y'all have grown to love, and it helps me make money, but it also helps me deal with the stress of my lifestyle. Because here's the thing, in just these 7 lines, Eminem reveals to us that he has two outlets for the stress he's facing: smoking and rapping. And that's usually how it goes as humans, right? Like it seems like we have our healthy outlets and then ones that aren't so healthy. For example, you might be stressed and you love going to the gym, or maybe you love getting shots up, right? Maybe you like taking walks, but then maybe you also struggle with an addiction, right? Whether that be smoking, drinking, overeating, something to that effect. And you can imagine for M, it may have been harder because one of his outlets also makes him money, right? So it can be hard to balance that as well. So we're kind of getting those already in verse 1. Within the first 7 lines, we're getting the early stages of that story and Eminem venting where he's at in life. And he continues to voice his frustrations in the verse. Getting this stress that's been eating me recently off of this chest, and I rest again peacefully. But at least have the decency in you to leave me alone when you freaks see me out in the streets when I'm eating or feeding my daughter, to not come and speak to me. So Eminem starts to speak directly to the like paparazzi, if you will, as he mentions that he simply wants to be left alone to be human, to eat his food in peace, take care of his daughter without the questions and the pictures, right? It's understandable that the paparazzi has a job too, right? anybody in paparazzi, I guess for the most part, doesn't necessarily want to do what they're doing. They're being told by some media company or news outlet to do what they're doing. So they have a job to do as well. However, of course, if you're in Eminem's position, you do wish that human decency would take over and maybe they would say, you know what? He's with his daughter. We'll pass today. Right. But unfortunately, Eminem being a dad would still make those headlines that that news outlet or that media company is searching for. Excuse me, is searching for because it's cute, right? It's positive publicity. But of course, Eminem, he doesn't want any at all right now, and that should be respected. And I hope, again, you're still paying attention to those rhyme patterns that are existing still within the verse, right? But another thing I meant to mention earlier is that one thing Eminem does extremely well also is not just stretch words, but stretch ideas or sentences, if you will. That usually comes when you don't always rap on the one, or if you just naturally have like a more scatterbrain method where your bars become like run-on sentences. But of course, you're still trying to fit the pocket. So, like, I think a great example of somebody that does this is actually my most recent guest on the show, You'll Never Know. I mean, wholeheartedly. I'm talking from experience. There are bars of his that I have not caught until at least the fifth listen. Like if I'm listening to a song on loop, I will catch something different each time. Because Neva is not the type to say simply like, I bring lyrical magic word to penny, right? Not a real bar. I just made that up for the example. Just flow with me here. But his is more like I write my rhymes in magic marker and still get paid. Pennies from the harder way, though I bring heat like I'm Wade, right? Like notice how if you were to just read that, it's one continuous sentence. But as I'm rapping, it's as if I split it in half so I could execute the scheme properly, if that makes sense. But also keep listeners on their toes to see if they're really paying attention to what I'm saying, right? So obviously there's the magic Penny Hardaway connection, right? But I'm saying I'm making pennies from my music. And, coming from the independent underground side, it's the harder way, right? Penny Hardaway, harder way. Even though in my heart, I know I'm worth more because my pen is magic and my bars are heat with a nod to D Wade. So you see what I mean? Like you don't always just have to fit your idea in one bar. You can stretch it. You can expand it however you want to. And I think Eminem does a good job of that. Like I said, it's really something you pay attention to as you listen, right? Like Eminem's not just saying, I got to get the stress off that's been eating me, but he says, like, getting this stress that's been eating me recently off of his chest and I rest again peacefully, right? It's not a just smooth sentence. It's separated so he still fits in his pocket. All right. So I hope all that's making sense. Okay. We are all about bar nerds on hip to the games. All right, this is what it's all about. You see why I love doing song breakdowns, especially with artists that are like really complex. Oh yeah, man, this is what I love. This is what I love. I'm in my element here. um, but yeah, I think this is something that I definitely wanted to point out because from a songwriting perspective, it's one of Eminem's signature skills. All right. So moving on to the rest of verse one, Eminem continues his focus on the media slash paparazzi. I don't know you, and no, I don't owe you a blinking thing. I'm not Mr. NSYNC. I'm not what your friends think. I'm not Mr. Friendly. It will happen quick if you tempt me. My tank is on empty. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Like Eminem, he's run out of patience. And I think the NSYNC jab was M doing that thing he used to do back then where he made it clear he was not one of those 2000s pop stars. Like bro was tired of them trying to turn him into that kind of star. He's basically saying, I'm not Justin. Respect to Justin, but I'm not Justin, and those guys. Like, I'm not the nice guy. I'm not on your side. Like, I'm kind of the opposite. And if you mess around, you will find out. But again, man, just listen to that rhyme pattern. I don't know you, and no, I don't owe you a blanking thing. I'm not Mr. NSYNC. I'm not what your friends think. I'm not Mr. Friendly. It will happen quick if you tempt me. Like this dude is a machine. He's a machine. Like it's he carries the cadence of a Dr. Seuss book, but it's actually dope. You know. And I say that with the utmost respect and admiration, by the way. No trolling whatsoever. I just think that was the first comparison that came to mind. And then here he is to end verse 1. No patience is in me, and if you offend me, I'm lifting you 10 feet. In the air, I don't care who was there and who saw me, just jaw you. Go call you a lawyer, file you a lawsuit. I'll smile in the courtroom and buy you a wardrobe. I'm tired of all you. I don't mean to be mean, but that's all I can be is just me. So, again, I hope you caught, again, he split it again, right? I'm lifting you 10 feet in the air. I don't care who was there and who saw me, just jaw you, right? The cadence. So, but it's an interesting, passionate ending for verse 1. As always, like we say on here, the first verse always sets the tone, and Eminem certainly does that here. This time, though, he expresses what he would like to do physically, which clearly shows how close he is to his breaking point. So much so to the point Eminem feels like he has so much rage and irritation built up that he could punch the media, paparazzi, whoever, 10 feet in the air, and has no issues with the consequences of that action, right? Like he says, like, I will even call you a lawyer and file a lawsuit. Like, I'll smile the courtroom, I'll buy you a wardrobe. I will literally deal with that consequence. That's how bad you guys are making me upset right now. That's how annoyed that I am. I will take the consequences of that action. You're upset when you create these kinds of scenarios in your head and already prepare for the consequence to follow. And I'm sure all of us can say we've been there at some point in life. But I love the last lines though, as Eminem says, I don't mean to be this mean, but like I'm just tired and I'm giving it to you real. That's all I can do. I'd rather be me and express this frustration than to fake it and act like everything is okay, knowing it's destroying me inside. So, a pretty angry verse from Eminem as he expresses many of the things he's fed up with. So, while I think it's fair to say that the entire song features a very agitated Eminem, I think this song can be divided in the following categories. Verse 1 expresses frustration. Verse 2, as we'll get into in a minute, is seems to be more social commentary, addressing controversy. And then verse 3, Eminem's a little more annoyed, irritated. Obviously, still carrying that frustration, but it's just more of like an annoyance or an irritation. So definitely keep those categories in mind as we move forward. But now we got to get into the chorus, which serves as Eminem's most memorable ones in his career. But first, if you like what you're hearing so far from Hip to the Games and would like to support Hip to the Games and show off your love for basketball and hip hop, here's how you can do that. As a fan of Hip to the Games, not only should you show your love for the podcast, but you gotta express your love for basketball and hip hop. With a wide variety of clothing and accessories, there is always a way to show how much the game of basketball and the game of rap means to you. Let everybody know what it means to be hip to the games by clicking the link in the episode's description to cop some merch and represent the H2DG lifestyle. All right, and then picking it right back up with the chorus for The Way I Am. And I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? In the paper, the news, every day I am. Radio won't even play my jam because I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? In the paper, the news, every day I am. I don't know. That's just the way I am. So I really love this hook for multiple reasons. One, it's a nod to the legend Rakim and his song with Eric B as the rhyme goes on, off their classic album Paid in Full, which I did break down that album in the past, so definitely check that out if you haven't. But Rakim said in that song, I'm the R, the A to the KIM. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? Eminem pays homage to one of his heroes and follows that same scheme to say, I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? He takes a page out of Rakim's rhyme book and adds it perfectly with the theme of this song. Furthermore, I think Eminem is just really embracing the noise surrounding him, not necessarily because it's true, but I think for his peace. Like if my image or whatever makes you think this way about me, then that must be who I am. And if you don't want to play my songs on the radio because of that, cool. As unfair as it is to him, notice he isn't spending his time denying what's being said in the news. He's not spending his energy trying to make these people like me and all these things. He's just rolling with it. And, he's essentially just shrugging it off, which I think can be a lesson for all of us. Sometimes people gonna talk. People gonna talk, but if they don't care enough to actually know you in real life, then their opinions don't matter, because that's the important thing to remember about Eminem. He has said some wild stuff in his career. Like, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong at all. There's no denying that. Young Eminem was wilding. And he is fortunate that he got a lot of grace to mature. I'm gonna say it again. Eminem is fortunate that he was able to receive grace to mature. Me and friend of the show, Martin, if you remember, if you a real one, if you remember, I think it was episode 3 with him, and we talked about that, right? We talked about the idea of Eminem being able to receive grace throughout his career. You know, it's because I'm gonna say something that's gonna essentially be unpopular. The kind of grace that Eminem has received throughout his career is the only kind of grace God can give. We are so flawed and biased that we struggle to offer grace to these kinds of people. So it would make sense that a God who is loving and impartial, can give that kind of grace. We look more like him when we extend the grace that he does. Eminem has benefited from that, right? To get the chance to mature, to get second chances after drug addiction, that is nothing but the grace of God. And we need that grace. Whether or not Eminem knows that or not, he has benefited from that. And, again, shout out to my guy Martin, because I had to hit him up for this. He from Michigan, loves Eminem. Um, a young man of God. And, I asked him for some help with this a little bit. Because, I don't want to sit up here and make it seem like I'm justifying some of the things Eminem did in his past, right? And, he reminded me, was like, Des, like, grace isn't about forgetting what's been done, but forgiving and growing from it to be better. And I couldn't have said that. I couldn't have said that better. Because if Eminem was coming up today, he would have been canceled so fast, it would have been record breaking. Dude was crazy. Past tense. Dude was crazy. And some of the things he was crazy enough to say, I believe he literally said to complete a rhyme. That's the thing about wild Eminem back then. I felt like a lot of stuff, if you listen some young Eminem, some stuff you're kind of like, I don't think he means that. I think he literally said that because it rhymed with the last word he used. And I know that that's controversial, as hip hop values integrity, right? And I know I certainly do, but I think that's what it was, And again, he was struggling with drug addiction, so it was a lot going on in his mind, I'm sure. And mind you, the same guy though, again, he had those. Uh, he was often criticized in the news for having homophobic lyrics, and but at the same time, this is a guy who showed it with his actions. Like, you know what? I'm gonna perform with Elton John. I'm gonna do stand with Elton John, and I'm gonna hug him at the end, right? And again, I even researched to the point where it got to a point where Elton John helped Eminem get clean from his drug addiction. So, like, I think he didn't write some statement. He didn't do some press conference. Like, he showed it in his actions with change behavior. And I think, again, that's why he ends saying, I don't know, that's just the way I am. Like, I'm not going to provide a dissertation or a case study as to why I am the way I am. Because not only does that sound exhausting, but I don't need to. Like, you can say what you want, but can you say you actually know me? I know it's a lot right there, but I think all of that is really deeply packed into that chorus. So, like I said, to me, it just kind of hits different when Eminem just kind of lays his guard down. It's just kind of like, you know what? I'm just the way I am. So after that first rendition of the chorus, Eminem gets into his second verse, which he starts with a brief thought regarding his past. Sometimes I just feel like my father. I hate to be bothered with all of this nonsense. It's constant. So obviously, if you know Eminem's story, you know that he never really had a relationship with his father. His father and mom split when he was really young, and at least from Eminem's side, that's really been it. So it's really interesting to hear Eminem say this because he had no relationship with him, right? How do you feel like your father if you didn't know him? How do you know you might feel like he did? And I think the point he's trying to make is, hey, my father left and gave up on me. So like him, I want to give this all up because it's stressful and just not worth continuing on. So the same way he gave up on our family, oh dang, I want to give up. That must be coming from him, right? I think I want to give this up because it's getting too stressful. So I think that part of it makes sense. And I think I personally can understand where Eminem is coming from. Because, like I can only speak from not growing up with a father, but like I wonder if it applies regardless if it's mother or father. But it makes sense that because they weren't in your life, the only thing you can identify with is the quality you remember them as, which often comes from the parent that raised you, right? So in Eminem's case, he was probably like, oh, this is new. Like, I haven't really felt this before. Like, this must be how he felt. And I know for me, like back in high school or college, when I had some moments of frustration, I'm going through my growing pains and stuff like that, I would have those moments of like, yo, like even in my young years of life, like that's not the Desmond I know to be. Like, this has to be coming from somewhere else. And because it's foreign to me, it's got to come from the person who wasn't around. Right. So I think that's why Eminem can confidently say, I feel like him, even if I barely got to experience him. That makes sense. A very interesting idea there, but after that, Eminem goes into a stretch of rhymes where he responds to controversy surrounding him and social commentary on the state of the world. So, like, sarcastically, he says, and oh, it's his lyrical content. The song Guilty Conscience has gotten such rotten responses. And all of this controversy circles me, and it seems like the media immediately points a finger at me. So I point one back at him, but not the index or pinky, or the ring, or the thumb. It's the one you put up when you don't give a blank, when you won't just put up with the bull that they pull because they full of ish too. All right. Again, I know you see the rhyme patterns, right? All this controversy circles me, and it seems that the media immediately points a finger at me. So I point one back at him, but not the index or pinky or the ring or the thumb. It's the one you put up when you don't give up and you won't just put up. Like, come on, man. Come on. This is homework, man. These are some of the dopest rhyme schemes, man. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. But as I mentioned before, Eminem was well aware of how he was perceived in the media. The focus was always on what he said, not necessarily why he said it. And, Guilty Conscience was one of Eminem's probably his most controversial song, even to this day, because the song was exactly that. It was a song he did with Dr. Dre, where Eminem was pretty much what we call today the intrusive thoughts, and Dr. Dre was the more clear-headed individual part of the brain, if you will. And the song was really a back and forth past the mic between the two, right? As they went through three different scenarios to share three verses on what it's like to have a guilty conscience. The first verse features a scenario of a guy robbing a store. The second verse is centered around sexual assault. And the last verse around a guy who found his wife cheating on him. So obviously, and again, especially if you know this song, extremely controversial because with these scenarios, it's like, why even record a song like that? Why even hit the record button, let alone why even like literally send that to be released, right? Like, why would you even want a guilty conscience? Like, I understand that there are people out here, unfortunately, who are actually going around doing these things and struggling with these decisions. And, especially you think, unfortunately, like the way Dr. Dre, of all people, who was accused of beating D Barnes back in the day, like, yeah, it was, even if it was a different time in 1999, they was tripping back then. They was tripping. They was tripping with that song. And, I can only imagine how a song like that would be received today. So, like, I say all that to say a lot of the controversy, again, that Eminem was receiving and he may have been mad about or upset about, it was warranted. It was warranted. Like, I get it from Eminem's like artistry perspective. Like, yes, that is a concept song, right? You think about a concept and you make the song off that concept. And I think there was a little bit of an attempt to educate people of like, hey, choose wisely, right? But like that's one of the things I'll push back on with Eminem. That like that again, that definitely warranted some controversy. Like you can't really be upset about that controversy because that record was crazy. But again, just as a human, I do understand Eminem just simply being frustrated, always being in controversy because then people start to see you as that guy and they ignore everything else you say or do, even if you're trying to grow. And I think that's why, again, to the earlier point, grace is so important because we don't nearly give out as much grace as we're supposed to. So obviously, again, I know there's levels to it, right? You don't want to just foolishly or mindlessly be giving out grace, but at the same time, um, grace helps people get second chances and allows them to learn and heal and grow. So that again, that's just something I wanted to address. But in a nutshell, I just continue to understand Eminem's frustration here. Like even with the guilty conscience out the picture, if you consistently put me in the negative light, it's gonna get mentally and emotionally exhausting. And Eminem details clearly how he responds to that. And furthermore, he even calls the media on their bull saying, "Hey, what about y'all? Like, y'all be doing some dirty stuff too. Like, y'all ain't perfect angels, right?" And I think he details that as he finishes the second verse in these lines. When a dude's getting bullied and shoots up his school and they blame it on Maryland and the heroin, where were the parents at? And look where it's at, middle America. Now it's a tragedy. Now it's so sad to see an upper class city having this happen, then attack Eminem because I rap this way. But I'm glad because they feed me the fuel that I need for the fire to burn, and it's burning, and I have returned. So a few things here. Number one, Eminem indirectly references the 1999 Columbine shooting, as it was said that the suspects' motives for the shooting came from being bullied, although there were also links to their influence from violent video games and even Marilyn Manson. And I think Eminem's point is that it's easy for the media to point the finger at video games or music when they should be pointing to the bullies or even the parents that are actually responsible for raising the suspects. But I think the larger point he's making is that that kind of violence happens all over the country, yet gets overlooked when it happens in lower class areas. That to me is a fair point, right? So that's why he says, "Oh, so now it's so sad to see," right? Because it happened to a upper class city, right? And I think similarly, Eminem felt like he's blamed, or he's become the poster child for negativity in hip hop, as if he was the only one who ever said anything controversial, right? And again, like I said, I know he mentions the Columbine tragedy of 1999, and it's like, again, I think he was taking that stance of like, you know, why is it that when something like that, it takes something like that for change to happen? Like we shouldn't even be getting that far. And I think definitely sharing some strong statements here from Eminem to end verse two. Because like I said, he has a point. Like he looks at himself and it's like, oh, I'm the poster child of all this negativity in hip hop, but it's like other people be saying stuff, you know what I'm saying? I'm not the only one, you know, putting the truth, at least my truth, out there. Like people, there are other bogus people doing bogus stuff, but you keep picking on me, and now I gotta make a record like the way I am to respond to you because I can't take it anymore. So I think again, I think all of that is what Eminem is dealing with internally around this time. And again, I think he took verse two to be able to say, you know what, I'm gonna call y'all out too, because the media, the paparazzi, like y'all fuel the fire to essentially keep applying pressure towards me, right? So he addresses that in verse two. Then after a third rendition or second rendition of the chorus, Eminem takes an even more personal approach to his last verse. Remember, I said with the categories, seems like he's going to get a little more annoyed, irritated for this final verse. And like I always say, last verse in hip hop, the third verse always has to be the haymaker. So Eminem tries to deliver that here as well. And I think he really lets the steam off regarding how he deals with his increase in fame. I'm so sick and tired of being admired that I wish that I would just die or get fired and drop from my label. Let's stop with the fables. I'm not going to be able to top what my name is and pigeonholed into some poppy sensation to cop me rotation at rock and roll stations. All right, so clearly fed up with the cons that come with fame, Eminem admittedly sometimes wishes his career was non-existent. And I think it's about the standard or responsibility you get when you get that publicity, especially in hip hop, where most of the time you write your raps. So you are responsible for whatever comes with them. Again, that's something Eminem had to face, right? And I think it's similar to the responsibility pastors have. For example, the Bible even says in James 3:1, right? Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly, right? So, for example, if a man cheats on his wife, most people would probably be like, oh, that's bogus, that's unfortunate. But if a pastor did it, it's like, how dare you dishonor your wife? Like, we should do something to you because you went against the Bible, right? Like, because that pastor has the responsibility to live out the word of God, he has more pressure on him to do the righteous thing, if that makes sense, right? It's and it's again that 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 portion from James applies to all of us, not even just the teachers, right? Like when you call yourself a Christian and you choose to walk this life, you are looked at with a little more of a microscope than the average person who may not have chosen that lifestyle, right? Because it's almost like you have more pressure to live out the word of God than anybody else, right? So I think similarly, Eminem is dealing with that in hip hop. So I think that's why Eminem is so clear about being tired of being admired because it comes with that pressure, right? Everything he does gets put under the microscope. He's judged more harshly because he's in the spotlight. And furthermore, he recognizes a similar pressure to outperform his biggest hit, My Name Is, although he knows that would essentially be impossible. And besides, I think he knew that because he's a white rapper, like the industry was trying to turn him into like the Beastie Boys, right? Oh, we're gonna no, 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 we gotta get you in the rock and roll, right? Because like you're rapping, but like come on, man, like embrace yourself. Like, I don't know, whatever, whatever I'm trying to, sarcastically mimic what the industry, what I believe the industry was trying to tell him. But, I think that's really what it was because he was a white rapper. They tried to basically do what they did to the Beastie Boys. Like, oh, you rap, but like, are you really rap? Like, hip hop is a fad. You know what I'm saying? Don't you want to go into rock and roll? We'll put you in rock and roll because like, yeah, raps, that thing's not gonna last long, I think that's what they were doing. And Eminem saw that coming, so he stood his ground and he didn't let that happen. Which is why it's pretty funny to fast forward and see that he did end up playing around with rock sounding songs later in his career, with songs like Berserk and even making the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2022. So it's kind of full circle, right? Oh, and then, but not to mention again, the rhyme scheme, right? I'm so sick and tired of being admired that I wish that I would just die or get fired. Like, again, man, Eminem is just a master with his voice. It just literally is just legendary stuff. Again, I know you might look at that and be like, yo, that's basic, Des. Like, you tripping. Like, that's just basic rhyme stuff. But to me, like, nah, man, that is just, again, just the what I always say in basketball too, sometimes, especially when it comes to like awards, sometimes it's not necessarily what you do, it's how you do it. It's how you do it. Look at these verses from Eminem. A lot of this stuff is basic, but it's the way he's doing it. It's the how he's doing it that makes it so special, right? So that's something I just continuously want to point out as we go through this episode. But continuing with verse 3 now. And I just do not got the patience to deal with these cocky Caucasians who think I'm some dude who just tries to be black because I talk with an accent and grab on my crotch. So they always keep asking the same stinking questions. What school did I go to? What hood I grew up in? Eminem's, he continues to detail his irritation with the way the media treats him like a science project simply because he's white in a predominantly black space, which is hip hop, right? Most notably, though, he had a 1999 appearance on the Howard Stern show where they did what he described here. Like they pretty much did what he described here, and he never went on the show again. Eminem, he sat through the interview, he did that, but when they wanted him to do promo at the end, he explicitly, I'm not going to repeat it, but he explicitly expressed his disgust with the show and how they went about the interview. And like I said, Eminem certainly went more inward here, and it continues to the end of the song. The why, the who, what, when, the where, and the how, till I'm grabbing my hair and I'm tearing it out because they driving me crazy. I can't take it. I'm racing, I'm pacing, I stand and I sit, and I'm thankful for every fan that I get. but I can't take a dump in the bathroom without someone standing by it. No, I won't sign your autograph. You can call me a butthole. I'm glad. So, a pretty classic way for Eminem to end his verse and essentially end the song, right? It's kind of like I feel like I got one of those feelings where like he had to put a period there before he kept going because he would have kept going, but it's like, you know what, let me stop. I done took three verses to air it out. Like, let me just stop and end it with that, you know? So yeah, Eminem was utterly annoyed. But at the end of the day, you know, he's happy to stand on his values and not just go for whatever just because he's a celebrity. You know, he doesn't care if his no makes you mad or you take it as disrespect or him being rude. He just wants to get some peace, which is hard to come by for a person in his position. And again, that leads us to the last rendition of the hook. All of this, with everything we've went into today, all of this, everything that I've poured my heart onto, because I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? In the paper, the news, every day I am. The radio won't even play my jam. Because I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? In the paper, the news, every day I am. I don't know. That's just the way I am. And with that, we've made it to the end of the breakdown. Man, these always go so fast. I don't know why. But one of the most misunderstood artists ever, not just hip hop, but I think music, period. You know, I have a thing for songs that give listeners a look into the person and not just the artist. And, you know, I hope I was able to do that today. Like I said, you know, I understand. I this is something me and Jay Powell talked about in our episode a while back. Like it's episodes like this that kind of remind me of what I'm trying to do with Hip to the Games and with especially with songs slash album breakdowns. And it's like I understand a little bit more of that responsibility. Like when I get into these songs, and especially an artist like Eminem, right, who's had his share of controversy, trying to balance that gap, that like gap of like not justifying their past mistakes, um, but also acknowledging their growth and acknowledging just the human emotions they felt even during their worst times, right? The times where they were hated and anything like that. It's, you know, this was like I said, I hope today was a successful song breakdown in that regard. Because you know me, I try, like I am not that type of person to justify and anything like that. But I am all for understanding. You know, I think the world needs more understanding, which is why I do these song breakdowns and album breakdowns in the first place. You know, I think the thing I always say, I really do truly believe in my heart that God wants to do special things through hip hop. And I do believe that he has led me on this path to even do it for, again, for people like Eminem who have past, right? Who have a past, who have mistakes, who are always in the limelight for lyrics, but people don't actually really want to look into the lyrics. I'm not afraid to go down that route. So I think that's what today was. And but even just like from a hip hop perspective, you know, I was sitting here preparing the episode throughout the week, and I'm like, well, Des, out of all the songs Eminem has, why is it the song that he's venting? Why is it the song where he's frustrated? Why is this one your favorite one? And I think it's just the honesty. You know, Eminem, he wasn't flexing. He wasn't even being his usual humorous self. Like he was seriously fed up. And it wasn't his usual satire, playful, kind of angry. Like this was real stuff in here. And I just love when artists show that they're human. I love when artists in the limelight show that they're human. You know, it wasn't about making a hit. It was about being heard and surrendering control of the outcome. You know, Eminem knew not everybody liked him or respected him or even wanted to understand him. But he used this song to say, cool, I don't care. I'm gonna be me, good, bad, and ugly. You know, the ugly allows me to become good. And you know, the good becoming ugly reminds me that I'm not always gonna be good, right? And you can't help but respect that, right? Like Eminem catered to all sides of who he was. And, you know, it's funny, the guy who was known to not give a blank had to remind everybody that he did not care about this fame stuff and that he would gladly drop everything if it wasn't for the simple fact that he just wanted to be one of the greatest MCs and most respected MCs ever. And I think there's a bigger lesson, one thing we can take away from this episode and this song is choosing peace. Sometimes you got to have those moments where you're like, bump people's opinions. I'm gonna be me. If you're worried about what everybody thinks or says, it will drive you crazy. And we see this in sports too, right? Like, especially those athletes that are in the headlines, it shows itself sometimes. Like, um, some athletes try to thug it out, and then it starts to get clear that the noise is getting to them. But then there are those other athletes that know themselves, and they end up being just fine, and because I got love for you. I'm gonna be 100 like I always am on this podcast, and tell you the greatest way to find peace within yourself is to find it in the one who knows you better than anybody, especially if you are in a similar situation to Eminem. It is imperative that it doesn't take a breaking point for you to plead for peace. So if you want to find freedom in the way you are, find peace in Jesus, the one who made you the way you are on purpose for a greater purpose, for a unique purpose. So as always, I hope you give this song a listen, whether it's for the first time or the millionth time. I hope it gives you another perspective than you may have gotten initially. And I just sincerely appreciate you giving me a listen, of all people, and taking time out of your day to hear my thoughts on some of hip hop's finest work. Please share any and all thoughts with your boy. I'm always around for further discussion and understanding and celebration on Twitter or IG. You can tag me directly at Desmond Powell _ if you want to talk some more. I always leave that door open. Of course, on YouTube, you can drop it in the comments. I'll be happy to reply and see that. And here's to another celebration of the God gifted brilliance that of hip hop's past, and some well deserved flowers to Marshall Mathers for reminding us it's okay to be fed up and let it out sometimes. That choosing and even demanding peace, even if it's not to the extent that he did, is always necessary. And in hindsight, we can see even a little bit what even a little bit of grace can do for someone's life. And of course, here's a huge shout out to you as well for being hip to the games. And I thank you so much for sticking around for another episode, all for the best combo there is. Peace out and God bless. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Hip to the Games. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit up the socials at Desmond Powell _ and at Hip to the Games on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok so you don't miss out on the fun. And please follow or subscribe to the show and leave a review on the podcast platform you're on right now, as your support is greatly appreciated.